Hello, everyone. Welcome to Call Camp. It's Steve Richard coming to you live. I'm looking forward to today because we're getting to do Call of the Month contest winners from our appointment setting business, Vorsight. So these calls were good enough to win the conversation competition in their respective months. We figured they would be good enough for you to hear as well. So everyone, just to set your expectations, today we will be listening to sales development calls, SDR calls, and these are good old-fashioned, get ready for it, in the world of ABM. These are cold calls, folks, but really well-researched, well-executed cold calls that we're going to listen to today. Just me. Couldn't get anybody to come and guest coach with me today, so if you want to guest coach in the future, I'd love to have the opportunity to work with you. Sorry about that. I've got to ignore this. I don't know why someone's calling this phone. And have the chance to coach some of your calls. You're going to have a chance to submit those later on. Now, one of the pieces of feedback we've received at Call Camp is we talk a lot about sports metaphors in Call Camp. Well, it is all about game film after all, but I can respect that. I certainly know that not everybody's a sports fan. I get it. Another metaphor that's great, and this actually comes from Tom Snyder, and he's one of my mentors who talks about Cirque du Soleil. And I could ask you, if I could see your hands, how many of you have been to Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus in the last 24 months? And I have a funny feeling not a lot of hands would go up if you were sitting in front of me right now. But then if I ask all of you, how many of you have been to Cirque du Soleil, I'd be willing to bet that every hand in the room would go up, because it's awesome. And let's be honest, they've completely redefined what it looks like to be a performance art act like a circus. And if you look at what Cirque du Soleil does and why they execute at such an incredibly high level, and why people like the Blue Angels and our America's military or other militaries perform at a high level, it's because they always look at their performance tape after the fact. And that's what we're talking about here, is going back, reviewing your performance. Let me ask you this. How many of you looked in the mirror before you left this morning? And I think the answer is probably a lot of people. So if you want to achieve this type of level of excellence that we see in Cirque du Soleil, it becomes so important that you go back and watch your performance and pieces of your performance. Not the whole thing, but pieces of your performance. You'll be amazed at what you see and what you hear. Now, this begs the question. And we talk about this on Call Camp a lot. Is this legal? We've had the opportunity recently to engage multiple law firms, lawyers, in some cases even state's attorneys' offices. And what we're learning all the time is that these call recording laws are incredibly misunderstood. People don't interpret them correctly, in particular corporate counsel. It's not their business to be experts at call recording laws. And in states like Massachusetts, it turns out that the law is really intended to be more about wiretapping than it's meant to be about call recording at all. So if you're sitting in a state like Maryland, Michigan, or Massachusetts, and you've been told it's illegal to record calls without consent, you've been misinformed in those states. And if you look at the actual statutes, and then if you look at case law, you're quickly going to see that in most of those, many of these states, that you can record calls legally without consent. In the blue states, you have to have two parties consent, so both people need to know it's being recorded. For a scheduled call, very easy, but for an SDR call, you're not going to start the call by saying, "Hi, I'm recording this call." It doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's important that everyone is smart about this. This is not a legal opinion. Talk with your counsel. So let's talk about sales coaching, and let's talk about sales management. And this research comes from my friends at the Corporate Executive Board, who were nice enough to actually sanction that I use the research. And they looked at relative strengths and weaknesses of sales managers, and these were self-reported. And oh, by the way, take a look at what the lowest one on the list is: coaching. So managers acknowledge that they're not particularly good at coaching. Now, this is a shame. This is a shame because if you look at the research that the Bridge Group did, and we did it with them a few years ago, we asked different generations what motivates them, and the biggest disparity we had compared to all the other options was more autonomy. Boomers basically saying, "Leave me alone, let me do what I want to do. I don't care about you. Just let me do my job." And Gen Y millennials who are saying, I want access to executive management and I want access to mentors, and somebody please listen to my calls and help me get better. I'm craving this kind of feedback. So people want it. And what we're seeing, especially for the younger sales professionals, people are looking for this kind of help. When should we coach? This is more research from the Corporate Executive Board, and it shows pretty clearly that if you give 3 hours per rep per month, really the magic is if you can provide an hour per rep per week, which I know is a lot, but if you can get to that level, you're going to see sales teams that achieve quota at 17% higher levels than those that provide less than 2 hours of coaching per month. So the data is very clear. And we could point to studies in McKinsey, Serious Decisions, Forrester, Gartner, the list goes on and on and on. So many organizations that have done research and studied feedback and coaching have all found the same thing. When you provide a lot of it, it's good. Now, this is an interesting story on this slide, and this data, what it's telling us is that there's this gap. There's a huge gap in perception. So for most companies that acknowledge, yeah, coaching's important, it really is critical to coach to achieve high levels of performance. If we want to be like Cirque du Soleil, we have to watch our game film and we have to provide feedback. At the same time, the reps are telling us it's not happening all that much. Compared with the managers, it's telling us it's happening a whole lot. So there's this big gap in perception. There's this big disparity between perception of the people who need the coaching from the people who can potentially give the coaching. How do we solve this? How do we solve this problem? And after this, we'll dive into the call. And one of the big things that we've observed in watching our customers and watching high-performance organizations is they have a culture of friendly competition. They always have a culture of friendly competition. And what we find is for a lot of these companies that have a culture of friendly competition, that culture is built around numbers. It's built around quantitative activity metrics. It's built around results metrics. So if you're a sales organization, they might have competitions around closing rates. They might have competitions based on the number of demos or the number of calls that you do in a week, or of course, your closed revenue. I closed more business than you closed. And on the sales development side, a lot of people have competitions, sometimes team, sometimes individual, but they're all revolve around a number, because obviously we have to achieve a number. What we found by studying different companies is that the best companies also have competition around quality. And it's not just about more, it's also about better. It's also about better. So this led to the concept of having a call of the month contest or a call of the month competition. And we do it here at Vorsight, our appointment setting firm. We've got about 30 sales development reps for hire in our other business unit. It's associated with and affiliated with ExecVision. And the way it works is every month, every rep is expected to submit one of their own calls. But not just submit it, rather they actually have to provide comments on their call. They have to comment on their own call, annotate it with what they thought they did well and what they could potentially improve upon. And we won't award a prize unless they've thought about their performance, much like Cirque du Soleil, and left feedback on that. Then they share it with their manager, who provides more comments and annotations and nominates the top 2 calls from their teams. That leads to step 3, where the second level leader, in the case of our business, it's our CEO. He picks a winner and a runner-up, and then we award prizes. And we've seen varying prizes, anything from PTO, gift cards. Some people will just simply do bragging rights, where they have a funny little trophy like a gnome or something like that that lives on the desk of the person who won the conversation competition for that month. So they have bragging rights. But PTO is free. So for organizations that don't have unlimited PTO, it's just a great gift for people to give them some time back. Or alternatively, they can also cash it in for more appointments towards their incentives. And then finally, the thing that we're going to be doing later this week, I think it's Thursday morning here, is the whole team comes together once a month. We buy them bagels and coffee in the morning, and we review the winning call, and we review the runner-up. And they love it. The team absolutely loves it. Now, I get a kick out of step 4. We were doing steps 1 through 3 before I sniffed around, and then I heard them announce the call of the month winner. And I said, wow, I want to hear the call. When are we going to play the call? And our managers and our CEO said, well, we don't actually play the calls. I was like, huh? What's the point of that? Like, I want to see the winner. I want to hear what they did differently in their call. I want to study it. I want to really learn from that and then identify best practices we can scale across the whole team. And they said, great, you do it. So that's where that whole idea of everyone comes in early, bagels and coffee, and we put the call on a projector, much like we do here at Call Camp. So that way the comments will pop up as we're listening to the call, just like the VH1 pop-up video, which you'll see today. And what we found with that, again, there's a lot of interesting research and science behind this. If you play a call recording with just the audio for a room full of people, it tends to go in one ear and it tends to go out the other. But instead, if you play that same call recording and then you have a visual component, when you have a video component that goes along with it, most learners, a disproportionate portion of the population has a predisposition towards visual learning over auditory learning. In particular in sales, sales has a higher proportion of visual and kinesthetic learners than other professions. They tend to be more kinesthetic. You hear sales leaders talking about doing battle and going to war. They're very kinesthetic metaphors, or or going and jumping on the field of play and blitzing and all this kind of stuff. All these metaphors are really physical metaphors or kinesthetic metaphors. So the reason I bring that up is if you want to have someone learn something well who's a visual, they have to see it. If you want to have someone learn something well who's a kinesthetic, they have to get their hands on it. They have to do something along the way. They have to take notes, things like that. And then for auditory, they can just hear it and they can regurgitate it like a parrot. So the advantage to doing it this way is everyone's got a notepad in front of them. Everyone's listening to the calls. Everyone's seeing the calls. And that's what creates that experience where people can learn so well. So with that as backdrop, let's turn it over here. And we're going to listen to two calls today. The first is from a gentleman named Abin, who's on our team. Abin did just an excellent job with this call. There was one practice at the end of this call, I'll make sure you have a chance to hear, that I've never heard executed quite like this before, to get a cell phone, and that led to the promotion for this event. How can you get cell phone numbers from your prospects? You're about to hear it, and you'll hear it in the real world. And I promise you, if you executed 2 or 3 elements that Abin does here, in particular the beginning of the call with the pre-call research, aka the 3x3 research, and that's a nod to funnel clarity. And then if you also executed the ability to get a cell phone number at the end, you would convert at a significantly higher rate, and your fall-off rate would be much lower for your conversations. So let's listen.
Hello, Carl. Hey, Carl. Sorry, I think we just got disconnected there. This is Anthony from TIBCO. I hope I didn't catch you in the middle of something.
Hey, Anthony. No, not at all. Sorry, I didn't hear anybody on the other line, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So let me make sure I'm in the right place here. At least, you're still the VP of Enterprise Technology there at Race Holding, right?
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, and I saw that you guys recently acquired 16 Coca-Cola production facilities out in the Midwest there.
Yes.
Yeah, congratulations on that. I mean, impacting your day-to-day any?
Well, yeah, it's we're kind of a grow by acquisition shop, and we don't have an acquisition team, so you know how that goes. We tend to do acquisition with our day jobs. So.
Oh wow.
This is a great place to stop. Now, the first thing that you're hearing here as you break it down is there's an ability in the beginning of the conversation to generate curiosity with the prospect by using the pre-call research, because Abin knew something about what was going on with the prospect and their situation. In this particular case, it was all about, I saw that you recently acquired 6 bottling facilities, I believe it was. The reason you do that, and this is according to the research of funnel clarity, is to get the prospect into a different mode of operation, into a different mental state that's known as System 2. And when you do that, you take them from a place where they were essentially sleepwalking through life, and you put them into a place where their brain is engaged and the rational part of their brain kicks in. And Sandler will refer to this as a pattern interrupt. How can we create some sort of a pattern interrupt? Because what happens is, in our mind, we're used to seeing patterns. So if you're an executive, like in this case Carl McDonald, who's the vice president of enterprise technology, I guess, here at Reyes Holdings, if you're Carl and you get a ton of cold calls, you're expecting a particular pattern. And when you see something that's outside of that pattern, and this is according to the language of funnel clarity, that's when you move into this system called System 2 in your brain. And that's what we hear right off the bat. So you hear someone who's very willing to interact with a bin versus if a bin had just pitched them, you're not going to get the same sort of reaction. Typically speaking, if there's a pitch in the beginning of a call, and we've done this research, then you get the pitch objection pattern, and you see that happen again and again and again, versus if you lead with something that you know about them, like the acquisition, you get them into that different system of thinking.
Right. So I'm curious then, what are some of your current priorities there as far as IT is concerned? Then acquisition and everything has its place, but how's that impacting you in terms of the IT side of things?
This is so interesting. And this is what's very different about this call than the typical call. Now, the way that we think about, the way that we describe a cold call like this is you're calling someone completely out of the blue. They have no idea that you're going to be reaching out to them. And as a result, they don't have context. Their mind doesn't have a chance to prepare. So they're trying to compartmentalize you. They're trying to take you and they're trying to put you in a bucket in their brain. And which bucket in their brain depends on what kind of information you give. So as the sales development rep conducting this call, or as a salesperson conducting this call, what we teach them to do is think of it almost like you're in a small room, and then over time as you walk, the room gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the idea behind that is in the beginning, typically speaking, you've only earned the right to ask small questions, closed-ended questions, or not big questions. Ultimately, in sales, what we want to do is we want to ask the big questions like, what are your challenges? What are your priorities? What's been difficult about those? What are your headaches? Those kinds of things. Who is that impacting? How is that impacting the bottom line? What has that done to the business? We want to ask those big business questions. But it's hard to ask those questions in the beginning of a context of a cold call. That's what's so great about this. I'm going to rewind it so you can hear it again. A bin does a really masterful job of taking a prospect into System 2 and then, boom, right off the bat, hitting them with the big, and I describe that here, big open-ended, I call it the gnarly question. It's the gnarly question on IT priorities. Usually, if you do that in the beginning of a cold call, it's almost like you're asking the girl to marry you right off the bat. You're usually going to get slapped in the face. But in this case, he does an excellent job of pulling it off right out of the gate.
So I'm curious then, what are some of your current priorities there as far as IT is concerned? Then acquisition and everything has its place, but how's that impacting you in terms of the IT side of things?
On the acquisition side?
Well, yeah, with the acquisition, how is it impacting the IT side of things?
Well, it's a traditional.
And the thing that's wonderful about this is that Ben correctly identified the feedback I gave him, and in this case Daniel had for him as well, which is I was succinct when he asked me to clarify. I should have been succinct in my initial question. I was too wordy.
We do more of a integration approach with this particular type of acquisition. So for us, it's a lot of.
Now, I'm going to skip past what Carl says here. We're going to jump to the next interesting moment.
Figuring out who does that, they've got a very much
Are they primarily
the systems we do, they're things that, the environment, if you will, ecosystem that we leverage. And, of course, there are systems that we need to provide. So we provide the things that we have to, and they provide the things that they're good at, and then we kind of balance it that way.
And, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it SAP over there at Coca-Cola production facilities that they're using, or are they primarily
the systems we do, they're more of an SAP shop. Yeah.
Right. And what are you guys more using predominantly?
So in the Coke system, of course, we just use theirs. In our other business units, we use a mix of things. Not SAP. We use JD Edwards. weed liberation.
So this is excellent. He knows that within Coke, they're using SAP, so by understanding their existing underlying systems, because he had done that pre-call research, that gives Abin the ability to then understand what are the other ERP systems that they're using, and then how could those linkages be made. Let's keep going.
It's a combination of Lawson for financials and Manhattan's warehouse management systems for some of the others. We even have a business unit that leverages VIP for the ERP suite, which is specific to the food and beverage industry.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So, that actually kind of goes into what I was calling about today. Are you familiar with TIBCO at all, Carl?
Yes.
Yep. So what do you know about us?
Mostly from the work that I used to do. Eaton Corporation was a big TIBCO shop, or trying to be at least at the time, and used it for a lot of different integrations. And
okay.
We, at the time, more of a data bus.
Now this is an interesting point in the call, because with somebody like a TIBCO, big brand name company, a lot of people know TIBCO. This is in our world, we've tested asking people if they know about TIBCO and not, and it's way better if you're going to ask people if they know about it because they have a big brand name. If you don't have a brand name, asking if the person's familiar with it makes no sense at all. That's like asking if they're familiar with a C-list actor in Hollywood or actress in Hollywood. They have no idea who that person is. It's just not even worth wasting your breath on it. So he did a good job with that. And now we're hearing, but this is the important thing, if you ask how they know us, you have to follow that up with understanding, how do they know you? Why do they know you? What's their experience been? Try to figure out if they've had a good experience or a bad experience, because that will color the rest of the call.
Right. Type environment, but certainly was looking to grow it there.
Where was that, if you don't mind me asking?
With Eaton Corporation out of Ohio.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And what are, I guess you guys are using JD Edwards, but any reason you didn't push to bring TIBCO over to Reyes when you moved over there?
Beautiful question. Any reason you didn't push to bring TIBCO to Reyes when you moved over there? Love it, because now we're starting to understand how this guy views TIBCO and what his experience has been in the past. So excellent, outstanding work by Abin. I'm going to fast forward here past that, and I'm going to move to this next area where he does some incredible work on asking an implication question.
Yeah, because this thing entered a bit of a financial
slowdown growing, especially
back out, right? We have a very business model, and that's where we don't have a lot of integration challenges.
Okay.
And by the way, he just said, just to set context, the prospect just said, and we're at minute 541 here, we don't really have any existing integration challenges today, and TIBCO is selling a real-time integration platform. So for most people, they would be a little bit dissuaded at that point. You're probing for challenges and realizing they don't have any challenges. That's like when you go to the doctor and they're probing around to see if you have any health issues, and there are no health issues. Everything is hunky-dory. Listen to what Abin does now. It's absolutely masterful.
You said it's working well for you today, but I imagine Reyes isn't going to slow down growing, especially since I saw you guys have an acquisition. So as you move ahead towards the future, are you foreseeing any sort of challenges coming with containing Fusion now? And so basically, I'm just asking, what are some things for the future that you might be worried about or curious about?
Yeah. In my view of the world is that as we grow and as other companies grow, the more sophisticated ERP systems we put in, or modules that we put in, depending on whether it's an ERP system or warehouse management system or what it is, that we're going to deploy those things out of the box. Right? We are not going to customize them. We'll configure them slightly, but the more we implement them, there'll be more black boxes. And instead of the humans typing data into the machines, we'll be typing data into the middleware, which will then move the data in and out of those black boxes.
Beautiful. And I don't know if I gave it away here how I felt about this question. Maybe just a little bit. But this goes back to the good old-fashioned spin selling, Neil Rackham, the classic white book with the red letters that say SPIN, spin selling. If you don't know it, you should absolutely read it. It's kind of like the catcher in the rye of sales. You have to know your classics. You got to know your F. Scott Fitzgerald, Great Gatsby. You got to know your spin selling. And this is really a simple idea, and it's so few salespeople execute it. Okay, everything's going well now. Are you foreseeing any challenges coming in the future that you might be worried about? I love that even more because he used the word worried. I love it. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt, helping the prospect understand what risks might be looming on the horizon. And oh boy, here we go. What Carl said right off the bat is, as soon as he got that question, is you're right. Right now, my view of the world is in the future. It's going to be out of the box. We're going to have fewer human beings keying data. It's all going to be done through middleware, and I have a view of the future that's very similar to your view. And this is, again, think about how Ben pivoted the call. There was a juncture before where the prospect, Carl, said, we don't really have any data integration challenges. One would think that would sort of shut down the call, but not for Ben. Instead, he says, do you foresee any challenges coming in the future? What are you worried about? And then, bam, Carl, as it turns out, has a view of the world that's exactly aligned to TIBCO's view of the world. So then it becomes a relatively easy process of getting the meeting. So now we're going to go down, and I'm going to fast forward to where he talks about why TIBCO exists, and we'll talk about Simon Sinek.
Right, point about that, and as we look more, oh wow, a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, so Carlo, why don't we find 30 minutes either sometime later this week or next week, for us to just go over some of the later work that we've done now, and as we look more towards the future, share how the fact that us being an agnostic platform and really one of our core beliefs being that middleware should be able to be automated and be able to talk to each other in real time. And, a lot of VPs seem to be looking more towards event-enabled architecture as well. So do you have your calendar up, Carl?
I do.
Okay.
And the thing that I think is so neat about that is the way that Ben tied asking for time, which is something we see. We want SDRs being very concise, very assertive when they ask for time. Don't be all wishy-washy and weak. Carl, do you mind if I ask you if you could maybe spare, 10 minutes? Oh, maybe just 5 minutes next week, Carl. You sound like Gil, the salesperson from The Simpsons. Don't do it. Don't be that SDR. Instead, what Ben does here so beautifully is he just clearly asks for the time. He has a clear purpose for what he wants, and he ties the time back with why TIBCO exists. In an event-enabled platform, we share these kinds of beliefs. Now, this goes to Simon Sinek, who I mentioned earlier. Simon Sinek is a guy, if you don't know the name, Simon, S-I-M-O-N, Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. I highly recommend you go to YouTube or you go to TED and look up the famous TED Talk that Simon Sinek did all about Start With Why. And what he talks about in it is that leaders, instead of talking about what they do, instead of talking about how they do it, leaders talk about why they do it. They talk about core beliefs. Human beings aggregate around people that they share beliefs with, that they share core beliefs with. So if you can have a core belief that you can articulate as an SDR, our company, we believe in this. This is part of the DNA and the fabric of being at our company. We all believe in this. And if the prospect shares that belief, it creates a much, much stronger bond. And that's why one of the things that we tag in our calls is this why you exist. So we can hear really good examples of how people do why you exist. So now we're going to fast forward to Ben collecting the cell phone number and the promised best practice. I promise you, if you implement what you're about to hear, your numbers will go up, period.
It's a hot
Time between 1 and 2
at Raise Holding.
769. For that step come. Yeah.
And now what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to play the cell phone number or the email address, but rather I want you to hear how Ben gets it.
Holdings.com. And what number should we dial into in order to reach you directly?
Same one you called, the 847.
Okay, hold on. I'll just skip past that real quick. Yep.
Okay. And a lot of people prefer that I send them a text the day of to remind them of the meeting. Would you prefer that?
There it is. Everyone write this down. When I heard this for the first time, I got really, really excited. Because I look at sales development as a Darwinist. I'm very Darwinistic when it comes to sales development. And if anyone knows anything about Charles Darwin, and when he went to the Galapagos Islands and he started to study the different species and just the just massive diversity in terms of the variation, the genetic variation in the Galapagos, he got really excited too, because it proved this whole idea of the selection process and how characteristics are selected over time based on survival of the fittest. Now, the reason I'm so interested in this is because whenever you listen to calls, whenever you study game film, inevitably there will be common practice. Common practice is stuff everybody does, and it's just not interesting because everybody does it. And then, every so often, you get uncommon practice, you get best practice, you get something that somebody's doing differently that nobody else has figured out. And that, when I heard this, I was listening on the mobile app when I first heard this, Howard Bin did this. A lot of people prefer I send them a text day of to remind them of the meeting. Would you prefer that? Here's what I love about that. We teach our people when they're asking overtime questions, is what we call them, extra questions at the end of the call, and that's funnel clarity's definition. When they're asking those additional questions to wrap up a call, we tell them, anybody else you want to include, and then can I get your cell phone number in case we have trouble connecting day of? It's not that good. It's okay. It's not great. What a bin did is a natural mutation, and then there's this natural selection process, meaning if you ask it this way, a lot of people prefer I send them a text day of to remind them of the meeting. Would you prefer that? You're getting some interesting things happening here. From the book Influence, they talk about something called social proof. And social proof is this idea that if everybody else is doing it, I should do it too. So that's the reason that every company's website has the logos of their customers, because if all of those other companies are doing it, all those logos that are on their website, I should do it too. And that's what's happening here. A lot of people, your peers prefer that I send them a text day of to remind them of the meeting. Would you prefer that too? So you're creating that social proof, and you're planting this seed of inception in the mind of the prospect. Would you prefer that too? And when you ask it this way, and I can't wait to test it, I promise you, the number of cell phone numbers you get to confirm is going to go up. And as a result, if you're getting blown off day of the appointment, which happens unfortunately all too often in our business, we know it happens on average 20% of the time across sales development organizations, 1 in 5 meetings, you get blown off. How many of those could you save if you had the cell phone number? Maybe half? That takes you from 1 in 5 meetings getting blown off 20% to 1 in 10 meetings, 10%. Think about that. That's a big, big difference. So a lot of people prefer I send them a text to remind them day of the meeting. Would you prefer that? Beautiful, Bin. Well done. Let me pause there before we move on to the next call, and I'm going to open up and see if there are any questions. So I am my own moderator today, and I don't see any questions coming in right now. So, gang, if you have questions, here's a great opportunity to ask them, or if you have any commentary, anything that you'd like to share yourself, any feedback about this call, maybe you disagree with my analysis, that's fine. You know, we're not all of the same religion. We all come from different schools. So if you have a comment, please type it into the questions box, and I will be able to see it. And I don't see any questions right now, so we're going to move on to call 2. And do a favor here. I'm going to take the hands, click here to see whose hands are raised. I'm going to lower all the hands. Do me a favor just so I have some feedback, because I'm just one guy sitting in a room right now, and I have no idea if this is helpful or useful. If this is useful for you, if you're finding help in this and this is going to make you better at your job, do me a favor, just put your hand up. So go on a GoToMeeting, and wow, okay, that was good. I'm seeing a lot of hands going up. Okay, beautiful. Thanks, guys. That's the validation I needed. Sometimes you feel like you're just talking into the breeze and that it's not really making an impact. So let's go to call number 2, shall we? Okay. Call number 2 is Rachel. Rachel, and she's talking to, in this case, Chad at Varian Medical Systems, and let's go right to the tape.
This is Chad.
Hey, Chad.
Hello?
This is Rachel. Hey, Chad. This is Rachel with Vizier. How's it going?
Oh, doing well, thanks.
Good, good. I realize that I'm catching you towards the end of your day. Do you have a quick minute, or are you headed out of the office?
Oh, sure, that's fine.
Okay, great. Well, I just had a quick question for you. It's my understanding you are still the senior director over all of HR. Is that right?
Now, one thing to pause on here, you heard Rachel say, I have a quick question for you. This is something that we've observed in working with a lot of SDRs over the years. I did the tally the other day between people and keynotes where I've spoken at and SDRs I've trained myself, in addition to a lot of other people who have been involved with our training business, which is now Funnel Clarity. It was well over 4,000 people in sales who have to do SDR job as part of their job. And one of the things that we've observed along the way is that SDRs have a hard time with the transition statement. So quick question is a simple thing that you can do in a transition statement. I've actually heard Mike Brooks use this as well. And it's interesting when you have two different people who come to the same conclusions that are unaware of each other's work. Frequently that means it's the right answer. So listen to how Rachel uses quick question.
Okay, do you have a quick minute, or are you headed out of the office?
Oh, sure, that's fine.
Okay, great. Well, I just had a quick question for you. It's my understanding you are still the senior director over all of HR. Is that right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, great. And I saw that yesterday. Actually, you guys. I don't know if this touches HR at all, but I thought it was pretty interesting that you guys are spinning off your imaging components business. Does that affect you guys at all? Are you having crazy or?
Well, actually, that's actually directly in process. So there's 3 businesses within Varian Medical Systems, and I am the lead HR person for the imaging components business.
So let me stop it right there. Okay, let's look at where we are on the call. Other than the phone ringing, this call has happened for roughly 40 seconds, 45 seconds. If you study what Rachel did here and what she did so effectively, in the beginning she gained permission to continue. She used the pre-call research, again what Funnel Clarity refers to as 3x3 research. And literally, she said nothing about what she does. Nothing. She just said, and if you can remember what it was, I was doing some research. I saw you guys recently spun off, and I'm gonna play that one more time so we can hear it.
Which is
great. And I saw that yesterday. Actually, you guys. I don't know if this touches HR at all, but I thought it was pretty interesting that you guys are spinning off your imaging components business. Does that affect you guys at all? Are you having crazy or?
Well, actually, that's actually directly in process. So there's 3 businesses.
That's all she said. She didn't even ask a question. She just said, yeah, and I saw this, and I thought it might be relevant to you. I'm not sure that you're spinning off your imaging business. And he's like, I mean, you could just hear the guy light up like a jack-o'-lantern and flip on, and boom, he's volunteering. We have 3 different business units. He's telling them things about their business that he would never tell the average cold caller who called. Not in a million years. If you cold called and you did a classic pitch, hi, Rachel calling from Vizier, we're workforce analytics software, helping companies like A, B, and C, wanted to get on your radar, blah, blah, blah. If you pitched him like that, you're probably getting a dial tone, or you're getting a lot of resistance and a lot of objections. Yeah, Rachel, thanks for the call. We're all set with our current systems. Really, no, I appreciate the time. Because the prospect never leaves that system 1 that we talked about before to enter into system 2. How do you get them in there? You got to do that pre-call research to understand just a little tiny bit. You should do it very quickly. Very quickly. And you need to have go-to places where you can get that information over and over and over consistently. A big one that people miss, and this is taught by Funnel Clarity, is go to Google and Google the company name, and then change the time parameters on Google is an excellent way that you can quickly get a nugget that you can use.
This is within Varian Medical Systems, and I am the lead HR person for the imaging components business, which is being spun off here in Salt Lake City.
Ah.
So yes, it does impact me significantly.
Yeah.
I bet that's been really, really crazy. How long?
Yeah,
you know how long that's going to take for y'all? Yeah, that is exciting.
Sure. Well, there's a January 2nd.
And I'm going to pause this here. We're going to fast forward a little bit through the questions, but you can hear the dialogue that's been created here is outstanding. It's an 11-minute cold call.
It kind of play into HR.
When you say workforce planning, what do you actually mean by that? Because a lot of people take it to mean different things. So, yeah, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I guess I'm just wondering, do you guys, is it going to be a pretty easy transition in terms of moving employees from Experian to now the new business unit, or will you guys have to be working with that a lot, or do you think that's going to be a pretty easy transition?
Well, it'll be an easy transition for most functions. Where we will have to create duplications would be within the HR, legal, and finance and IT world. So
now, if you contrast this call with the last call, in the last call of Ben, hit him with the big, what are your priorities? What are your IT priorities question in the midst of these acquisitions. Hit him with that question early on. Big, gnarly, open-ended question. In this case, Rachel does it with a little bit more subtlety, a little bit more art form, where she creates a little more dialogue and then makes that transition to understanding what are some of those challenges that Chad's dealing with as he goes through this change, because it's a big change in his business. So how does that change in the business where you got spun off, how does that impact you in terms of your challenges day to day in your role as the senior-most person of HR in this new unit? Let's go ahead and fast forward from here.
What for instance, in my work out do I want?
Interesting. Okay. Cool. And then I had a question for you. So I was doing a little bit of homework. Obviously, how I came across the imaging component spinning off.
Right.
And it seems like you have a pretty data-driven background. I mean, is that within HR specifically? So I guess you said you're looking, you're going to be looking at how y'all are doing your staffing. Are you getting involved with like reporting and operations at all? Or are you specifically talent acquisition?
And now she does this, again, beautiful job of tying back what she knew. In this case, that Chad was a weather analyst in the Air Force. So he's data-driven, and then tailoring those common challenges to it. Phenomenally well done, phenomenally well done. At this point, I'm going to take us down to how she transitioning goes for the time.
And do you have
Yes.
basically, right now at least, you're...
I as an analyst that uses our current system, which is SAP, to pull reports from and things like that. But, whether we use SAP going forward could be a question as well.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because you have a whole kind of new horizon ahead of you. I mean, that's crazy. So I guess then you're going to be basically, right now at least, you're just receiving those. You aren't actually interacting with SAP as closely.
No, we're not. So, and mainly that will be something IT will figure out as we disentangle that, what makes sense for our ERP system going forward.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess just to give you a little bit more context as to why I kind of thought it would make sense to reach out to you. I'll admit I didn't quite realize you were so heavily involved with the spinning off of that business, but I figured it might kind of touch y'all there. So we do a lot of work in workforce planning. It's specifically more in terms of mergers and acquisitions, but transitioning one workforce to another, but more so in how analytics are interacting with workforce planning and kind of how you're moving forward with that, how you're relating pieces of data from disparate systems to one another. Basically, we were talking with a lot of HR executives, and what we were hearing from them is that across the board, departments are turning to HR for more data-driven guidance. That was particularly difficult for them to deliver when they were trying to reestablish a workforce.
And there it is. in the midst of the acquisition, or in this case, spinning off, they're turning to HR for data-driven guidance, and HR is having a hard time producing that data-driven guidance and that analytics. That's how she ties together the homework she did before the call into the value proposition of this client, and then right now positions it and pivots it to going for time.
So I was just curious, would you have time maybe next week when I'm not catching you off guard, or maybe even at the end of this week, to just kind of continue a dialogue on where you guys are thinking about going with that?
Yeah, I guess I would. I don't mind that. It would be important for me to better understand what your product is, because I don't.
And there you go. And now you get the meeting. It's a pretty easy meeting, a lay-down meeting to get after that. I'd like to hear her do that in a more succinct way. I'd like to hear Rachel do that. If I had one piece of constructive for Rachel on this, be more succinct, lose the filler words. And you saw me type in that comment, careful of the ums. Whole lot of ums in there. It's unnecessary. You can cut down those ums really nicely and have a better result. So those are two competition winners from Vorsight. I want to thank you to my friends at Funnel Clarity for some of the intellectual property and the terms of art that we talked about today. I encourage you to check out their website. They've got a bunch of excellent content that you can also look to as well. And then if you want me to coach your calls, please submit your calls. We've got a great call camp coming up next month. At this point, I'm going to take some questions. So I'm going to go over and take some questions, but write down this link, execvision.io/submit a call. We're looking for your call submissions. If you get your calls are submitted, you will get them played. I promise you we will play your calls on Call Camp and provide feedback in the moment. You're going to get it for free from experts. So there's no reason not to do this. I promise you it'll be the best thing you've gotten for free ever, way better than a stick of gum. How about that? All right, so let's look and see what we got here. Any questions that have come up? And if you have any questions, pop them in. All right. Sorry, Ben, I heard you having trouble listening to hearing the conversations. I know, Ben, I have to play a little bit with the audio going in and out. Can you define 3x3? What that means is identifying, and this is Funnel Clarity. This is their term, identifying 3 key points of information on the company or contact in 3 minutes of research. It's a framework by which you can gather information very, very quickly. And spin selling. So the book is called Spin Selling. Spin Selling. It's a classic sales book. Everyone in sales needs to read that at some point. Someone said, Brett, why are you still on Windows 97? Hey, Brett, I'm an old dog. I don't learn new tricks. So that's a good question. Was this an intro call, or had it been previously spoken with the prospect? And the answer is it was an intro call. So that was a completely cold call. Jonathan, you asked, has it been going off of a general script, or is he just feeling it off? The answer is he has a game plan for the call. So there is a game plan that's somewhat scripted, but it is not a script. It is a set of talking points that allows for improvisation. It allows for personality. But as a rule of thumb, you have a blueprint or a game plan of a call without having a script that you read verbatim. We see that to be a much more effective way to do it. What do you mean by, Katie asked, what do you mean by change time parameters? Change time parameters, I don't know. Katie, if you want to clarify that, I can answer that question. Will I be sending the presentation? Yes, the presentation will go out after this is over. Somebody asked about the concept of System 2. I encourage you to take a look at Funnel Clarity. Funnel Clarity has excellent resources on System 1 versus System 2. Every human being is in one of 2 modes of operation. So something called System 1, something called System 2. And it's called Funnel Clarity. F-U-N-N-E-L, Funnel Clarity. Funnelclarity.com is their website. And I think, I see what you're saying, Katie. You're saying in Google. So in Google. So the question was time parameters. The way Google works is in Google, and actually I can share it with you right now. Hold on here. Let me just shrink this so I can see what the heck I'm doing. In Google, if you search for something like, what am I going to search for? Now I'm drawing a blank here. Let's search for Funnel Clarity. We've been talking about them so much, might as well search for Funnel Clarity. And then if you go up to the top where it says Search Tools, you can change it from any time, and then you can make it, let's say it's the past year. So you can change the time parameters on Google to only look for stuff in a certain time restriction, like past year, past month, past 24 hours. And in this case, there's nothing that's happened in the last 24 hours. In the last week, you have a few results for Funnel Clarity that happened over the last week, although it looks like a lot of them are not related to the company. But if you do a Boolean search with the quotation marks like this, now you're getting, for example, on the AAISP member update, they announced that Vorsight BP changed its name to Funnel Clarity. And that would be the way that you can find a piece of information like the ones being used by the SDRs on these calls. Great. Let me see if there are any other questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So any final questions, ask those questions now. Hold on here. How do I do it? And I think I outsmarted myself. I can't find those questions. So if you have other questions, let me know, everyone. Next call camp, we're going to be working with Peter Wayman at ZoomInfo and Cindy Littlefield at the Bridge Group, and we're going to be listening to objections. So this next one is going to be more about scheduled calls, the sort of calls that an account executive does, and it's going to be objections in the context of a demo. How do you handle objections in the course of a sales demo, of a software demo? You're going to love that one. So please submit your call. Go to this web link, submit your call, and after that, happy selling. Watch your game film, everyone. Be like our friends at Cirque du Soleil. Be awesome and make great sales calls. Thanks.